Boldwood presents X on the Beach, written by Phoebe MacLeod and read by Victoria Fox. Chapter 1. If you were to ask my friend Priya what the most depressing day of the year is, she wouldn't hesitate to inform you that it's the first working Monday in January. I don't agree with her, but I can see the logic in her argument. Priya is a solicitor at Watson & Fletcher, one of the top family law firms in the UK. And the first Monday in January is known to them as Divorce Day, due to the spike in divorce inquiries on that day every year from people who have just spent the holiday season cooped up with a spouse they've suddenly realised they can't stand. My friend Rosie, who is the executive assistant to the CEO of a biotech firm, will tell you that the most depressing day of the year is actually the third Monday in January, colloquially known as Blue Monday. Apparently, this is when most working people feel at their lowest ebb, due to a combination of factors including the end of the holiday season, the fact that they're up shit creek financially after massively overspending at Christmas, and their failure to keep any of their New Year resolutions. I don't agree with her either. In my opinion, the most depressing day of the year is actually the one that's about to dawn, New Year's Day. Think about it. The build-up to Christmas starts so early now that it might as well begin in July, but once you hit December itself, there is a defined set of steps designed to ramp up your festive spirit to the point that you consider it quite normal to go out in public, dressed in a jumper with an enormous reindeer on it. I'm talking about the well-loved milestones of the first Christmas ad, the first card to drop through the letterbox, putting up the decorations and so on. It all adds to the sense of anticipation that climaxes, in my family anyway, with a massively passive-aggressive gathering on Christmas Day, at the end of which we all wonder why we bothered. Disappointing as that inevitably is, it doesn't matter, because we've still got 5 more days of holiday and New Year's Eve to look forward to. New Year's Eve is quite my favourite day of the year. Living in London, there's never any shortage of party invitations, and I always calculate my schedule carefully to make sure I fit in at least 3. Everyone is in a good mood, usually keen to kick the crappy old year into touch and focus on the possibilities and opportunities the new one has to offer. What's not to love? It's all wonderful and exciting until you wake up the next morning, New Year's Day. Your head is inevitably pounding, and your mouth feels like it's grown fur on the inside. You're full of self-loathing for thoroughly overdoing it, and what do you have to look forward to now? Nothing. It's January. The days will be short, grey, and brutally cold for the foreseeable future. You're going back to work, and if that weren't depressing enough, you've put on enough weight that your office clothes are just waiting to punish you by pinching and squeezing you uncomfortably. There isn't even a bank holiday until Easter, which feels so far away, you might as well measure the time in light years. And then, just to twist the knife, someone came up with the concept of dry January. I mean, isn't January bad enough on its own? Why not have your dry month in June, when the weather's nice, and you might be wanting to go booze-free as part of a preparation for your summer holiday? But no. Let's encourage people to give up alcohol for a month that already has everything going against it. There's a reason why people call January the longest month of the year, and New Year's Day is the dismal marker that tells you you've arrived. Yesterday was a typical New Year's Eve for me. I was full of optimism as I spent ages getting my makeup just right and coaxing my light brown hair into some kind of updo before fishing out my best underwear and pouring myself into a sparkly cocktail dress. If I'm brutally honest, I knew the dress was a size too small when I bought it in the post-Christmas sales, but combined with a push-up bra, it does amazing things for my normally modest cleavage. Even before Christmas had arrived, I decided which party invitations to accept and pre-booked the relevant Ubers. Leave that to the last minute, and you're going nowhere. Party number 1 was at the home of one of the increasing number of my friends who have children. I knew they'd be frazzled after their little darlings had basically spent a whole week on a continuous sugar high, and although I was sure they'd do their best to make it as far as midnight, I could tell they were pleased when I made my excuses around 9 o'clock. Party number 2 was at Priya's, as Rosie and I agree we wanted to be at her house for the all-important midnight celebrations. This is the second year she's hosted, and she already has a reputation for pushing the boat out, with proper champagne to toast the new year with, and a selection of delicious snacks to soak up the booze. Although we both struggle a bit when her lawyer mates talk shop, she really knows how to host, and either drags us away or encourages them gently onto a topic that we can join in with. Predictably, we'd found ourselves on the balcony of Priya's flat at some point during the evening, shivering with cold as we sucked on cigarettes. Neither of us smoke normally, but it somehow seems obligatory to light up after several glasses of wine. When Priya held the first of these parties last year, we'd stubbed them out under our shoes and tossed the ends over the balcony, but I think someone must have complained because an ashtray had appeared last night. Party number 3 was where things got messy. It was well after midnight by the time I arrived, and everyone was already fairly well lubricated. Party number 3 is always high on my list of regrets in the morning. I'm sure if I did the sensible thing and got an Uber home just after midnight, New Year's Day wouldn't be half as bloody as it is. But I never learn. Every year, I convince myself that it will be different, and every year, it's exactly the same. To be honest, there are some years where I literally have no idea how I made it home at all. But it seems I've managed to excel myself this year. It's still dark when I wake with a splitting headache, but when I finally summon the courage to crack open one eye so I can check the time on my bedside clock, the damn thing doesn't seem to be there. Not only that, but some bastard has replaced my beautifully tasteful pine bedside cabinet with a horrific white formica thing that looks like it came from either a charity shop or a kind of catalogue where nothing costs more than $14.99. Who would do that to me? Knowing that my head is already pounding fit to burst and my mouth tastes like someone lit a bonfire in it. I shut my eyes again. Maybe I'm still asleep and this is a dream, although I don't remember sleep ever hurting this much. It's at this point that my bladder decides to join in with the punishment. When you're already suffering, you'd think it could start with a gentle nudge to inform you that you might want to think about going to the loo at some point in the not-too-distant future, but no. It's gone from nothing to you're going to wet yourself if you don't take action now, in the space of a couple of seconds. That's all very well, I tell it silently, but I have an unhappy choice. If I give in to my bladder's increasingly urgent signals, I'll have to sit up, at which point my poor head will inevitably explode. If I don't, well... Reluctantly, I open both my eyes. The room is still dark, so apart from the ghostly presence of the aforementioned bedside cabinet, it's not too bad an experience. I take a moment to check whether there's any sign of motion. If the ceiling starts to spin, then my bladder will have to wait until I finish throwing up. Thankfully, it stays still. 1 point to me. I roll onto my side and start to curl myself into a fetal position. My plan, such as it is simple. I'll let my legs kind of fall out of the bed and roll the top of my body after them, hopefully landing on all fours and thus avoiding the need to sit up. Once I'm on the floor, I can crawl on autopilot to the bathroom and start to deal with the problems one by one. God, my bedroom carpet feels coarse. Either my palms and knees are super sensitive this morning, or I need to take a serious look at it when I'm feeling more human. As I edge carefully round the bed and head for where the door should be, I'm utterly confounded to find only a blank wall, painted in a colour that doesn't look at all familiar. What the hell is going on? Oh no. Please God. Please let this not be true. Ignoring my howling bladder and whatever is trying to sledgehammer its way out of my skull from the inside, I lift my head and force my eyes to try to focus in the gloom. When they do, my worst fears are confirmed. I'm not in my flat. Unfortunately, I don't have time to process any more than that, as my bladder is now throwing a full-on tantrum and bad things are going to happen if I don't find the bathroom urgently. Thankfully, it doesn't take me long to locate the bedroom door, and I shuffle towards it as fast as I can. On the other side, I find myself in a small hallway with 4 other doors off it. One is obviously the front door by the looks of it, and a hasty investigation reveals that the bathroom is the one on the right. It takes me a few moments of feeling blank wall before I locate the light switch, and then I haul myself gratefully onto the toilet. There is no relief, of course. As the pain in my bladder lessens, my head simply ups the ante to take its place. New Year's Day regret is already in full swing, and I haven't even managed to work out what time it is or where I am yet. What the hell have I done? There's something not quite right about this bathroom, I notice as I peer around. I can't put my finger on it exactly. It's perfectly clean, and the carefully folded towels look like they'd be soft against my skin. It's just a bit bare, I realise eventually. There's a toothbrush on the basin along with toothpaste and a wash bag on the windowsill next to an assortment of little bottles that look like they've escaped from a budget hotel. But very little else. It's nothing like the bathroom in my shared flat, which is so full of different hair and body products that I sometimes wonder if one of the precarious stacks will collapse at some point, burying one of us underneath. Where the hell am I? I shut my eyes and try to force my adult brain into life. I remember leaving Priya's, wishing her and her partner Martin a happy new year as I sought out the Uber that would take me to my final destination of the evening, the strangely named XYX nightclub, where I was due to meet up with Sonia and Lily, my friends from work. I'd originally decided against going, as I've always believed you become too old for nightclubs the moment you're legally allowed to go into one, and I wasn't sure I'd know anyone apart from the two of them. But Sonia had been so persistent that I'd given in and accepted against my better judgment. The memories are starting to come back. Loud music with the kind of bass you don't so much hear as feel in your stomach, and that weird ultraviolet lighting that makes everything white stand out. Not that the women whose white underwear was shining like beacons through their clothes seemed to mind. A patterned carpet, typically sticky underfoot, and the hot, slightly rancid smell of too many people in a confined space. The recollection of that makes my stomach heave uncomfortably, and I swallow hard in an attempt to soothe it. It had taken a while to find Sonia and her group. I remember that. There was some sort of complimentary cocktail, sickly sweet with lots of fruit in it. One of those idiotic umbrellas and a harsh aftertaste that left you in no doubt that it packed a punch, and the booze used was certainly not from any of the premium labels. Lily wasn't there, having gone home with her husband shortly before I'd arrived, but I danced a bit with Sonia and her other friends. Well, it's a nightclub, so that isn't surprising. But something else is coming back now. A boy. Familiar, yet also strange. The details of his face are slowly starting to assemble, and when they finally do, I feel as if I've been given an electric shock. Please, God, no. Anyone but him. As I creep back towards the bedroom, I'm already promising any deity who will listen that I'll not only do dry January, but a whole dry year if they'll only make my suspicions turn out to be false. However, one glance at the bed is enough to tell me that nobody is listening. The bedside light is now on, and the person I've just spent at least part of the night with is sitting up, revealing a torso that has filled out a little, but is still recognisable. "Morning, Tori," Stuart says with a smile. Fuck. Chapter 2. "Please tell me you're kidding." Rosie's voice is horrified as she stares at me from the other end of our slightly threadbare but very comfortable sofa. When the three of us first moved to London, it was a no-brainer that we'd share a flat, and when Priya moved out a couple of years ago to be with Martin, we were inundated with people wanting to move into her room, eventually deciding on Sophie, who works in recipe development for a major supermarket chain. "I wish I was," I moan. Although I'm feeling considerably more human after a long shower and some heavy-duty headache pills, washed down with coffee and a carb-laden breakfast, the downside is that the events of last night have come back to me in vivid detail. If I wasn't still feeling a little delicate, the temptation to try to blot them out with vodka would be almost overwhelming. "You had sex with Flipper Stewart?" she asks, evidently struggling as much as I am with the concept. Don't keep repeating it, I tell her. It's bad enough that it happened at all. I don't want reminders. But you hate him, she persists. How long were you two together before he dumped you? 6 months or so at uni, that's all. And it's ancient history. I haven't seen him in years. Why was he at the nightclub? I sigh. Pure bad luck on my part from what I can work out. You mean it was a coincidence? Bloody hell. Talk about a small world. Why didn't you just punch him in the face? Have you forgotten all that stuff he told you when you broke up about you being a bit needy and not able to keep up with him sexually? Her hands make air quotes as she speaks. I was feeling magnanimous. You know what I'm like when I've got a few drinks inside me. Yeah, all the world is your best friend. Doesn't alter the fact he basically called you frigid and demanding. Give the girl a glass or two of wine and everything is forgiven. I think I was working more along the lines of everyone deserving a second chance. People change. I know I've changed a lot since leaving uni. So no, I didn't punch him in the face. I let him buy me a drink instead and we got chatting. It's still a hell of a leap from "Hi, how are you?" to jumping into bed with him. I know, all right, it wasn't my finest hour. How did it happen? And that's the one part of the jigsaw that still eludes me. I asked myself the same question repeatedly as I did the walk, or in my case, tube ride of shame this morning. Thankfully, being New Year's Day, I didn't stand out, as there were plenty of other slightly dishevelled people still dressed in last night's finery, also making their way home. I even exchanged a few meaningful glances with some of them, as if to say, no, I didn't go home last night either. I wish I knew, I tell her honestly. A bit too much to drink, he was being kind and attentive, and I guess I just thought, why not, when he invited me back? That part of the evening is still a little hazy. Your reliability. Rosie sighs indulgently. Next year, I'm going to chaperone you all night. You won't need to. This is never happening again. Yeah, and I'm the Christmas fairy. I mean it. I'm going to be 27 this year. I'm too old for this shit. She giggles. How was the sex? Flipping disappointing. It was Priya who gave Stuart the nickname after I complained to her once about Stuart's apparent determination to work his way through all positions in the Kama Sutra whenever we had sex. Every time I felt I was starting to get into the rhythm and enjoy myself, he'd interrupt the flow by demanding I shift or turn over. The term flipper comes from Priya's remark that it seemed like he was just flipping me around like a burger, and, unsurprisingly, it stuck. Actually, I say carefully, from what I can remember, that bit wasn't too bad. I think one of the people he dated after me must have explained the error of his ways to him. I blush at the memory. He was actually very good, and I have a horrible suspicion that my booze-fueled lack of inhibition meant that I was rather more noisily appreciative of his efforts than I would normally have been. I'm not sharing that with Rosie, though. I'll never hear the end of it if I do. There's a short pause. And then she laughs again. What now? I ask. I was just thinking how you've certainly started the new year with a bang. You're funny, I tell her sarcastically. What am I going to do? I'd say, you've already done quite enough, she snorts. Be serious for a minute. The pause this time is much longer, and I can almost hear her brain whirring as she considers different options. Do you have to do anything? She asks eventually. How did you leave things this morning? I blush again, remembering the garbled excuses as I frantically grabbed my clothes and locked myself in the bathroom, while I tried to stuff myself back into them. Honestly, I tell her, it was one of the most awkward moments of my life, especially when Stuart banged on the bathroom door while I was in there because he wanted to pee. When I pointed out that I was getting changed, he laughed and said it wasn't as if I had anything he hadn't seen already. I think he was honestly expecting to use the loo while I was still in there. There are some things you should definitely never share, no matter how close you are to someone. Anyway, what did you say to him when you left? I cringe again. I thanked him for having me and said it had been nice to catch up. Rosie positively explodes with laughter. What? I ask, irritated now. Sorry, she gasps when she regains some control. Only you could be so unfailingly polite. She loses herself once more in gales of laughter, and I can't help joining in, even though the joke is on me. I've had a thought, she breathes a little while later. You got it the wrong way round. How? He should have thanked you for having him, and you should have thanked him for coming. She emphasises the last word, so I'm left in no doubt as to her meaning. You're disgusting. You know that. Hey, I'm not the one leaping into bed with old flames at the drop of a hat. Anyway, back to the conversation. You thanked him for having you because you'd weirdly morphed from drunken sex goddess into some kind of Victorian maiden aunt who's just had a lovely cup of tea with a friend. Anything else? Did you swap numbers or make arrangements to meet up in future? No and no. Then I chalk it up to bad experience and move on. You're right. Thank you, Rosie. I tell her after giving it some thought. Nothing was said on either side to indicate that we planned to rekindle our relationship or even see each other again. So maybe it's not as bad as I feared. Hey, what are friends for? She replies warmly. Although, promise me one thing. What? Never ever say, thank you for having me, to a sexual partner again. I laugh. You've got a deal. We lapse into comfortable silence as she picks up the novel she's currently reading, and I turn on the TV. As I search through the menu for something undemanding to watch, I reflect on her words, and the more I think about it, the more reassured I am. This was a colossal mistake, but I might just have got away with it. Rosie tells me you shagged Flipper last night, Priya remarks blandly when I call her later that day to thank her for the party. What was that about? Bloody hell, I retort. It's nothing sacred. Oh, come on. Do you seriously think she wouldn't share such a juicy tidbit with me? She's got a point. The three of us have been friends for so long, I don't think there's anything we don't know about each other. And I'd certainly be pretty miffed if the two of them kept something like this a secret from me. So, she continues, tell all. It sounds like you already know everything. I know his technique is allegedly improved, which is a pity, because we'll have to find another nickname for him now. Rosie said you met in XYX. I shouldn't have gone. I don't know why I do it to myself. You do it because you're a relentless optimist. You adore New Year's Eve and secretly wish it would never end. It's one of the things I love about you. Everyone else peaks at Christmas, but that's just a warm-up act where you're concerned. To misquote the incredibly irritating Wizard song, you wish it could be New Year's Eve every day. I smile. You've got me. It's just a shame that the day after is literally the worst day of the year. Priya laughs gently. This one certainly is, because you've got the added regret of your night with Flipper. What were you thinking? I don't know. I think I was just a bit lonely and Stuart happened to be in the right place at the right time, saying the right things. Why were you lonely? I thought Sonia and Lily were there. I didn't see Lily as she'd already gone home, but Sonia was there, and although I don't know any of them, there were a couple of other people in the group who were quite chatty. The problem is that they were pretty much welded to the dance floor, and there's only so much deafening techno music I can take before I start to get a headache. So I retreated to the bar area where it was quieter, and there he was. You poor old lady. You could just have gone home. Yeah, but I pre-booked my ride and I hadn't got a hope of changing it, so I was kind of stuck. Stuck at the bar with Flipper. Sounds like a line from another song. She starts humming a tune. What's that meant to be? I ask after a while. Priya has many talents, but despite her arguments to the contrary, she's spectacularly tone deaf, so any tune sounds pretty much the same if she's singing or humming it. You can sometimes still guess the song from the rhythm, but that isn't the case today. Stuck in the middle with you, she says, as if it's totally obvious, before continuing in her toneless manner. Techno to the left of me, techno to the right. Here I am, stuck at the bar with Stu. You should be on TV with talent like that, I tell her sarcastically. I know. What are you going to do about Flipper then? Rosie thinks I should just leave it. What do you think? I'd probably go a bit further and suggest you keep at least 5 miles between you and him at all times. He was a disaster when you two were going out, and I'm also pretty sure he was playing the field behind your back. He even came on to me once. Really? When? Pretty much the first time he met me? But that was only a week or so after we got together. Bastard. What did you do? I told him firmly that I was gay, and even if I wasn't, I wouldn't go behind your back. What on earth possessed you to tell him that? You're one of the most heterosexual people I know. In fact, weren't you going out with Charlie then? I was, she says, sounding suddenly thoughtful. He was a lovely boy. I think I was a bit too much for him. Wonder where he is now. Anyway, her voice returns to its usual brisk tone. I told Stuart I was a lesbian because I thought it would get rid of him. As it turns out, I underestimated the sex pest. I think he actually found the concept a bit of a turn-on. Dirty sod. Why didn't you say anything to me? She sighs. I was going to, but it was one of those boozy college parties, and I thought maybe he'd just been clumsily trying to pay me a compliment. You were really into him, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt and he never tried it again. By the time we all realised what a lowlife he really was, it was a bit late to tell you. It's probably relevant now, though, in case you're falling for his alleged charms again. Oh, don't worry, I tell her firmly. I'm not. Good, she says simply. You deserve way better than him. When the call ends, I sit on my bed for a while, digesting the information Priya has just shared while drinking a cup of tea. It's clear that Stuart had the morals of an alley cat back then, and I doubt very much that this particular leopard has changed its spots in the meantime. One of the things I hate most about New Year's is the whole New Year's resolution thing, but I'm barely halfway down the mug before I've made one. I'm taking Priya's advice and never going within 5 miles of Stuart again. Chapter 3. One of the only good things about January is that it's one of our busiest times in the office, so the first day back passes relatively quickly. Cocksmith Careers, where I work, specialises in recruitment within the financial sector, mainly in the City of London. Like Priya and her divorce Monday, the return to the office after Christmas always sees a spike in people who suddenly decide they need to move jobs immediately. We may be a small agency, but we punch well above our weight, mainly due to Alan Cocksmith, our founder and CEO. A wiry man of indeterminate age, Alan cut his teeth in investment banking before setting up his recruitment agency 10 years ago, and his success is due in no small part to his extensive network of connections. We often joke that there isn't a mover and shaker in the square mile that Alan isn't on first-name terms with. We're a close-knit team. Sonia was his first recruit, followed by me 5 years ago, and then Lily most recently. The fact that we're an all-female team is, according to Alan, pure coincidence. But we secretly believe he finds women generally easier to cope with in the workplace. He makes no bones about his dislike for what he calls preening idiots with vastly overinflated opinions of themselves. Given the industry we work in and the nature of the personalities it attracts, this can be tricky, which is why he leaves the bulk of the work to us, focusing his own time on board-level appointments, which work in a very different way to the stuff we deal with. On the face of it, our role is fairly simple. People who want to seek a new opportunity register with us, and we put them forward for positions that seem like a good fit and take a hefty commission from the new employer if the match is successful. In reality, there's a lot more to it than that. We help our candidates to hone their CVs, provide interview coaching, and generally do everything we can to help them present themselves in the best possible light to potential employers. Alan also expects us to keep on top of what he calls the domino effect, which is that anyone moving to a new position should leave a vacancy behind them, which presents another opportunity for us to place someone, and so on down the line. It's challenging work, especially when we're as flat out as we are now, but it's also incredibly satisfying when we manage to place someone successfully. This January looks like it will be no exception. It may only be the first day back, but I've already fielded a number of inquiries and tried to give each person the impression that they're the new centre of my world. Lily and Sonia are similarly busy, and Alan is nowhere to be seen, which means he's probably got a deal on the go as well. As I've already mentioned, appointments at the top levels work in a different way. There's nothing so crude as applications and formal interviews. It starts with a whisper that an opportunity might be about to open up, followed by several lunches at exclusive restaurants, where theoretical options might be discussed and preferred candidates softened up. culminating in a quiet chat to thrash out the final details over a glass or two of something eye-wateringly expensive in a private members club. Alan likens it to fishing with a double-ended rod. One end has the bait to draw in the employer, but you also need the right lure at the other end to tempt your candidate away from their current highly lucrative position. It sounds exhausting, but Alan seems to thrive on the adrenaline. Lily, on the other hand, is definitely not herself today. On the surface, everything seems normal. She's making calls with her customary efficiency, but I can tell something is off. Is everything okay? I ask her when we take advantage of a rare lull to slip into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. Yes. Why shouldn't it be? Her tone is guarded rather than hostile. I don't know. I get the impression something's bothering you. Did you have a difficult Christmas? You were with your in-laws, weren't you? She sighs as she pours boiling water into 3 mugs. Yes, and it was fine. Well, sort of. I get on really well with Dan's family, and his brother brought his girlfriend, Amy, along too. She's one of my best friends, so it's always lovely to see her. They met at our wedding, did I tell you? No, but I'm guessing that's not what's on your mind, I say, determined not to let her lead me off on a tangent. It isn't. It's the baby thing. Of course it is, I realise. Lily and her husband Dan have been trying to conceive for a while, but haven't had any luck. She doesn't mention it often, but I know it's getting her down. Things came to a bit of a head, she explains. Dan's mum asked when we were going to give them some grandchildren to dote on. Oh, that's a bit insensitive. She didn't mean anything by it. We haven't shared our troubles with her, so she wasn't to know, but it just brought the whole thing up to the surface again. Dan and Amy got into a long discussion about IVF, adoption, and so on. And I ended up getting cross with both of them because it made me feel like I was a broken piece of machinery. It might not even be you, I reassure her. It could be him. It's neither of us as far as the medical tests can tell anyway, she says sadly. His sperm count is just fine, and they can't see anything wrong with me either. It's just not happening for some reason. Anyway, ever since the conversation with Amy, Dan's convinced himself that we should look seriously at IVF and won't shut up about it. It's getting me down. What do you think? It doesn't matter what I think because we don't meet the NHS criteria, as I've explained to him about 5 times. You have to have been trying for over 2 years and it's only 18 months for us, and you also need to have had at least 12 unsuccessful cycles of artificial insemination. I murmur. Sex with a turkey baster. This does at least raise a smile. I know, and they say romance is dead. I've heard it doesn't even buy you dinner first. Oh, it gets worse, she tells me. At least 6 of the 12 must have been what they call intrauterine insemination, where they use a catheter to deliver the sperm pretty much straight into your fallopian tubes. Compared to that, the turkey baster is almost appealing. I get you. Did Amy have any better ideas? I ask. I love Amy, but she's never struggled with something like this. Her view is simply that I'm stressed and I just need a good holiday to get things moving. After the brief moment of humour, her voice and expression have sunk again. I smile. That does sound more appealing than the turkey baster or catheter, to be fair. Yes, but the turkey baster does at least have a basis in science. I don't think I've ever heard of a fertility specialist recommending a holiday. Have you spoken to any fertility specialists? Not about holidays, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Anyway, Amy's also got to be in her bonnet about it now, so I'm getting hassled in stereo. She's decided we need to go to the Caribbean. A week in the Caribbean or a catheter. I know which I'd choose. This raises another small smile. I tried to deflect her by telling her about Alan's January holiday ban, but she merely shrugged and said we could go in February instead. I'm not sure it's an outright ban, I tell her. Alan just doesn't want to end up short-staffed at one of the busiest times of year. I'm sure he'd say yes if there was a good reason. And how do you think he'd react if I waltzed into his office and said, Alan, I want to go on holiday in January when we're really busy so I can get pregnant and promptly naff off on maternity leave? Lily, I hate to break it to you, but Alan's fully aware of your situation because he's been in the room several times when we've been talking about it. You know what he'd do. He'd send you on his way with his blessing. She considers my point for a moment. You're probably right. Anyway, I'm not going to ask him because it's not happening. I just need a way to tell Amy that. You could just say no. She laughs softly. You haven't met Amy. That's easier said than done, especially as she's decided she needs to come as well to lend moral support. Please tell me she's not going to be sitting at your bedside urging you two on, I say with a giggle. Oh, I think I'd rather do it with a turkey baster. Anyway, the fact is that the idea is fixed in her mind now. She's already emailed me twice this morning with ideas. Is Dan on board with it? He's not anti. I mean, he doesn't think it will make any difference to our chances of success, but the idea of winter sunshine definitely appeals to him. Sensible man. If I win the lottery, I've always said I'd buy a house in Australia. Why there? Because their seasons are the exact reverse of ours. I could spend British summer here and then head for Australia as soon as the weather turned, so I could live in perpetual summertime. She considers this for a moment. Christmas in the middle of summer would be a bit weird though, wouldn't it? You're right. I guess I'd need a Christmas house too. Somewhere where the snow was guaranteed, but I could still get about. A cabin in the woods with a roaring log fire, she suggests. I like the log fire, but not the woods. What's wrong with them? I've seen too many horror films where people get murdered in the woods. Okay, no woods. My attention is distracted by Sonia, who is miming dying of thirst at us from her desk as she talks to someone on the phone. We'd better get back, I say to Lily. What are you going to do about this holiday, though? I don't know, she replies as we make our way to our desks, and I hand Sonia her mug. Perhaps I won't do anything. Or maybe I'll let Amy and Dan slug it out and just go along with whatever they dream up. The rest of the day seems to pass in a blur. By the time Alan finally arrives and summons us for a staff meeting at 4:30, I've added 7 new candidates to our client list. The major upside of this is that I haven't had time to reflect on my idiotic hookup with Stuart. He doesn't even get a look in on my journey home at the end of the day, as my mind is pleasantly engaged daydreaming about how much better January would be if I were drinking rum on a warm Caribbean beach instead of rattling along in a stuffy tube under freezing rain-soaked streets. If I were Lily, I know exactly which option I'd be choosing. Chapter 4. One of the earliest traditions that Priya, Rosie and I started after we moved in together was Saturday brunch. It's a strictly no boys allowed ritual where we discuss the events of the week and anything else that's on our minds. We did briefly consider inviting Sophie when we chose her to be our new flatmate, but I think we were secretly relieved when we found out that she spends pretty much every weekend at her boyfriend's parents' house in Surrey. After trying pretty much every cafe within walking distance of our flat, we settled on the eponymously named Rowena's, which offered the best vegetarian selection for Priya. Rowena greets us warmly every Saturday and always ensures we get our favourite table by the window. I've been thinking about your Stuart problem, Rosie says to me. Priya hasn't arrived yet, so we're sipping coffees while we wait for her. Which problem is this? I ask. It was a mistake and I'm not seeing him again. No problem. Yes, but it's not as simple as that, is it? We need to examine your motivation for sleeping with him so we can prevent you from making a similar mistake in future. The motivation was simple. I was drunk and in the mood. Stuart was a known quantity, if an unfortunate choice. I really don't think we need to pick this apart. Rosie's probing is interrupted by the arrival of Priya, looking flushed and irritated. Explain to me why engineering works are allowed to create merry hell on the Northern Line on the first weekend of the year, and they've already had the whole of Christmas break to faff about. She demands crossly as she sinks into the vacant chair. After 20 minutes with my nose rammed against the armpit of some guy who's patently never heard of bloody deodorant, the driver announces that the train is terminating 4 stops before the one I want. I waited ages for a bus and then, of course, there has to be a sodding accident. So we sat in stationary traffic for half an hour. Welcome to London, where nothing works properly. You'll be glad to know that my coffee machine is absolutely fine, Rowena assures us as she sets a cup in front of her. Soya milk latte, just the way you like it. Thanks, Rowena, you're a lifesaver, Priya replies as she bends over the cup and takes an appreciative sniff. Rowena smiles. I'll give you a few minutes to collect your thoughts before I come back to take your order. I'm starving, Priya declares, grabbing a menu. You don't need that, Rosie tells her with a laugh. You should be able to recite it from memory by now. Maybe you could go on Mastermind. Name, Priya Singh. Specialist subject, Rowena's breakfast menu. Question 1. What is the dish that Tori orders most often? Easy, Priya replies. Poached eggs and avocado on sourdough. Which is what I think I'll have today. I agree, with a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. Totally predictable. The distraction appears to have lifted Priya's mood, thankfully. I think it's an eggs Florentine day for me, she declares as she sets down the menu. I think I'll join you, Rosie says. Although I like the eggs royale too. Oh, I don't know. What shall I have? Toss a coin, I suggest. Heads for the salmon and tails for the spinach? No, she states suddenly. I'm going to have the eggs royale. Sure? Priya is grinning now. Rosie dithering about what to order is as much a feature of our Saturday brunches as my predictability. Of course she isn't, I retort. Quick, take the menu away from her before she has a chance to second-guess herself. So, what's everyone been up to? Priya asks once we've given Rowena our orders. We were talking about Tori's Stewart problem before you arrived, Rosie tells her. It's not a problem, I repeat strenuously. It was a mistake and it won't happen again. Priya narrows her eyes as she stares at me. Who was that film star who kept marrying the same guy? She asks after a moment. Rosie and I just stare at her blankly, so she repeats the question to Rowena, who's just arrived with our orange juices. Do you mean Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton? Rowena says after thinking about it briefly. They're the ones. Priya replies triumphantly. What have they got to do with Tori? Rosie is patently as lost as I am. She probably said the same thing the first time they got divorced, and yet she went back to him. I think there's a bit of a difference between a drunken one-night stand and getting married, I point out, still unsure what Priya is trying to get at. Semantics, Priya says. I agree that marrying someone you've divorced once is strange, but the reasoning behind it is probably similar to your setup. I sigh. I can tell she's warming to her theme, so there's zero chance of getting her to drop it. In what way? It shows that the door isn't completely closed. There's still something between you. Or, I counter, it could just show that I wasn't making good choices. Rosie laughs. I think we can all agree that you made a bad choice. The question we're trying to answer here is why. I told you, I say testily.